Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and as promised, we're taking a full week-long look at the 2014 Kia Soul. Now, not a whole lot's going to be changing for the 2015 model year, except for the availability of a brand new Kia Soul electric vehicle known as the Soul EV. Today's video is going to be focusing primarily on the Soul we're taking a look at right here, which is the Exclaim model. This is the most expensive and most loaded version of the Soul available in America. If you want to know more about the Soul Plus, which is sort of the midline trim of the Soul, it will be the bulk of sales, then you'll find that review on my channel. There's a link down there in the description as well. The 2014 Soul was the second generation of this boxy vehicle. It was completely redesigned for that 2014 model year vehicle, and that's why there's not a whole lot changing for the 2015 model year. Now, unlike the second generation redesign of the Scion XB, I think Kia really got everything just right. That Scion XB, I'm not really a big fan of its second generation design, but I thought the first generation design was very, very attractive. Whereas with the Soul, I think the first generation was a little bit too funky for my tastes, but this generation is spot on. Now, in case you're wondering, this Tiger Nose grille here isn't a true grille. It doesn't actually allow any air into the engine compartment. All the air openings are right down here in the car. Because we're in the Exclaim model, we get these LED turn signal indicators right here on the side view mirrors. And these side view mirrors are also power folding, and they automatically fold when you lock the car, and they unfold when you approach the car. The practical basics of the Soul's form continue in this second generation model. We have this very square back end with a very horizontal tailgate hatch that really improves cargo loading practicality. Although the dimensions of the Soul didn't change much from the 2013 model year, it does look longer and sleeker and slightly more aggressive, thanks primarily to this window line that drops a little bit towards the rear. It does hamper rearward visibility just a little bit, but it doesn't hamper practicality at all because the roofline is still very square. The Soul is really not a crossover vehicle, very much like the Nissan Cube or the Scion XB. It's just a very practical, very square hatchback. So you won't find all-wheel drive and you won't find crossover-like ground clearance. Let's pop up the ruler from the bottom so we can see how well the Soul stacks up. As you can see, this is a decent amount bigger than a Ford Fiesta hatchback. It's a little bit bigger than a Nissan Cube, but it is a little bit smaller than a Fiat 500L or a Scion XB with which it directly competes. I also think the Soul competes very well with your average compact sedan, something like a Honda Civic, a Kia Forte, or even a Toyota Corolla, and they're all on this much larger end of the scale. I know a lot of people are scratching their heads about that one, but the Honda Civic sedan is relatively large these days, and it is a decent amount bigger than this Soul. The Soul obviously sells on a combination of cargo practicality and style, and I think that the overall look is very attractive. We have these round reflectors right down here that sort of mirror the fog lamps up front. We have these C-shaped tail lamps right here. They're optionally LEDs. It really depends on which model you get. The base models use standard lamps, and the up-level models use LEDs. You'll find the release for the tailgate hatch right down here, and you'll also find an optional backup camera positioned right here between that handle and the Kia logo. Overall, I give this 9 out of 10 points when it comes to exterior style. I think that Kia struck an excellent balance between making this vehicle a little bit quirky, a little bit interesting, but not too far out of the mainstream. Nissan with their Cube did make a very asymmetrical design, and that really put a decent number of people off of it. And I think that some of the other entries out there are just a little bit boring when you compare it to this. Under the hood, you'll find two different engine options for 2014 and 2015. Things start out with a 1.6-liter four-cylinder engine. It produces 130 horsepower and 118 pound-feet of torque. That engine is limited exclusively to the base model of the Soul, and you probably won't find too many on the dealer lots. That particular engine is mated by default to a 6-speed manual transmission, but you can get a 6-speed automatic as well. All versions of the Plus and Exclaim use a 2-liter direct injection four-cylinder engine. It produces 164 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque, and it's mated only to that 6-speed automatic transmission. For 2015, there's also an EV option that uses a 109 horsepower motor that also produces 210 pound-feet of torque. Fuel economy does not vary much with this vehicle regardless of which engine or which transmission you get. The 1.6-liter four-cylinder engine gets 24 miles per gallon city, 30 highway, and 26 combined with the 6-speed manual or the 6-speed automatic. It doesn't matter which one you choose. If you get the 2-liter engine option, then you get 23, 31, 26 combined. Late availability in 2014 and available in the 2015 model year Souls, you can also get an Eco package attached to that 2-liter four-cylinder engine in the Plus model only. That will boost your combined and your city mile per gallon numbers by 1 mile per gallon overall. It adds a start-stop system as well as low rolling resistance tires. If you're in the EV model, we get a 27 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which is quite large, and it gives you a range of about 120 miles. Front seat comfort comes in at 8 out of 10 points. The standard driver's seat is a 6-way manual adjustable driver's seat. It adjusts up and down, forward and backward, and it also tilts, of course. All models have a standard tilt telescopic steering column. It is a manually adjustable column, but it does have a decent range of motion. If you get the Exclaim model, we also get a power driver's seat. It's It's a 10-way adjustable seat with a power adjustable lumbar support. Certain people may find this a little bit more comfortable than the seats in the lower end models because the lumbar support is adjustable. Now if you're in the base seat, it does have a fair amount of lumbar support, but it's not adjustable. Personally, my back really liked that, but your back may not, so you should spend a decent amount of time, especially in those lower end trims, to make sure the seat is right for you. The seating position, both front and rear, is relatively upright, and that really makes it a lot more comfortable, especially for adults to sit in the back. The seat bottom cushion is a little bit higher off the floor than you'll find in some of those subcompact entries, and I think in terms of overall usable space back here for real people, this is actually more comfortable than a decent number of mid-size sedans. I have about 3 or 4 inches of legroom left here sitting behind myself, and I also have about an inch of headroom left. Now we are in the sunroof equipped model, and that does cut down the headroom by a decent amount. It's about an 1.5 inches of headroom reduction both front and rear. So if you're a taller person, you may want to skip that panoramic sunroof. If I move on over to the right side of the vehicle, this front seat is all the way back in its tracks, suitable for a 6'5" passenger. I still have about an 1.5 inches of legroom left right there. And if I move over to this middle seat, I actually still have about 1/2 inch of headroom right here. It's relatively comfortable as far as compact cars go. Even mid-sized cars don't have this much room in the middle. If you're looking at something like a Ford Fusion, then you're not going to be able to put a 6-foot-tall adult in the middle seat of that mid-sized sedan, but you can in this Kia Soul thanks to this very upright profile. In terms of rear seat accommodations, we do get a center armrest with 2 decently sized cup holders, and the rear seats do fold in a 60/40 folding fashion, almost completely flat with the cargo area behind it. The only downside to note in the Soul is that if you take a look at the seat belt right here, you can see some interesting wear marks, and that's because the position of the seat belt right here, it does tend to get caught in the latch mechanism for this seat back. So if you're trying to raise the seat back right there, back into place, it is very easy to get that seat belt caught into it. There is a little hook right here on the side that you're supposed to put the seat belt into, right like that, to keep it out of the way of that little latch mechanism, but that seems a little inconvenient to me. Let's take a quick look around the inside. We have height adjustable seatbelts for both the driver and the front passenger, 2-way adjustable headrests, and our particular model has the optional leather seats. Leather is optional in the Plus and the Exclaim model. Depending on which trim you're in, there are 3 different fabric options. It gets nicer as you go on up the scale, and if you get the Plus model with the Primo package, you can get a 2-tone leather interior. If you get the Exclaim model with leather, it's only black. The door panels are highly stylized, and we have a soft touch plastic upper, soft touch plastic right over here, and a soft touch armrest in our model. Now the interior parts quality does change a little bit depending on which model you're in. Because we're in the top end trim, we have these color change speaker grills right up front. You can either set it to the mood lighting mode, which we're in right now, which cycles through a color palette, or you can change it to beat along with your music. Over on the passenger side, we have this very large and very deep glove box. You can see how big that is right there. We also have a little shelf right there to help hold some papers. It's also air conditioned in our Exclaim model, and you'll find the vehicle's cabin air filter right inside. Moving on over to the dashboard, we have soft touch plastics up high and hard touch plastics below this main portion of the dashboard. We have a speaker right over here and our air vents. Because we're in the model with the Infinity sound system, we have this center channel speaker right up here, 2 large air vents, hazard light button. The model we're taking a look at right here has the optional 8-inch touchscreen infotainment and navigation system. This is an entirely new system for Kia. If you want to know more about it, then go ahead and click that banner at the bottom of your screen. You'll be taken on over to that video. Because we're in the fully loaded model, we have a single zone climate control system with heated and cooled front seats. Below the climate controls, we have 12-volt power outlets, an auxiliary input, and a USB input for your media device. Our top-of-the-line model is equipped with the optional keyless entry and keyless go system. That's what the remote looks like right there. If you didn't get that particular system, you would get a slightly different key fob. We have a very traditional shifter and 2 large cup holders right here, easily able to accommodate these large takeout drinks that I have right here. A traditional handbrake right there. Moving on back, we have a very large and deep center armrest. You can easily put a wide variety of things in here. I have some clips for no particular reason right in there. Over on the driver's side, we have easily readable white faced gauges for both the tachometer and the speedometer. We also have a digital readout for the engine temperature as well as fuel gauge right there at the bottom of those dials. Because we're in the top end package, we have a color LCD right here. If you were in the lower end packages, you would get a sort of monochromatic red display right here that also gives you trip computer information. This gives you a little bit more. You get navigation information, music information, certain service displays, as well as vehicle settings accessible through that display. While lower end trims get a urethane steering wheel, ours has the leather wrap steering wheel. It is very comfortable. One thing to note is that the urethane steering wheel in the Soul is actually quite a nice urethane wheel. I find a lot of those plastic wheels out there kind of sticky and kind of grabby, but that's not happening in the base steering wheel in the Soul. We have our cruise control buttons right over here, radio buttons right over there, dedicated buttons for voice command, phone hang up and pickup button, And these buttons right here control that multi-information display right there between the speedometer and the tachometer. To the left of the steering column, you'll find the controls to control those lighted speaker grills, off, music, and mood, as I said earlier, and you can adjust their brightness independently of the dimmer in the car. Over here on the left of the driver, you'll find the dimmer controls as well as the heated steering wheel button that is optional and your traction control off button. Moving on over to the side, we have our window switches, door switches, mirror controls, as well as the power folding button for the mirror right there. There's also an auto mode that will power fold and unfold them when you lock and unlock the car. Up here on the ceiling, the Exclaim model gets an upgraded fabric headliner. If you did get the base or the plus model, you'd get a headliner that looks more like trunk liner in your average mid-size sedan. Right over here we have separate buttons for opening and closing the shade on this large panoramic moonroof. And it goes all the way back there over the second row of seats, as you can see. Back up to the front, we have a sunglass holder right over here, and we also have an auto-dimming rearview mirror. When it comes to cargo practicality as well as cargo capacity, this vehicle really excels. We have just under 25 cubic feet of storage space right back here, which is fairly large for this segment. Now we have a fixed tonneau cover. It is hard, and that is something that I dislike. I wish it was a roller top, but it is relatively easy to remove, and it does fold in half right there across the middle. Now once that's out of the way, you can see right back here I have a 26-inch and a 24-inch roller bag. Now if you do want your luggage under the tonneau cover, at first glance this looks like it's a little bit less convenient because this 26-inch roller bag is all the way over right like that, and I can't actually have this rear seat latched into position. If I position that seat belt that was caught, as I said earlier, if I put that seat belt out of the way, latch that seat back, try and push in this 24-inch roller bag, you'll see that this tailgate does not actually close on that bag. It's just a little bit too big. And you'd think that you'd be unable to put these two bags under the tonneau cover, but you're actually in for a surprise because there's more cargo room going on in here than you might imagine. I'll take these out so we can see what I mean. So we take these bags out like that. This additional cargo space under the load floor gives you another 6 inches or so, and it means that you can now put a roller bag, a 24-inch roller bag, in this position in the cargo area. And we can actually re-snap in this tonneau cover right on top of this bag, just barely. And then, of course, your bag will be hidden by this tonneau cover. You can very easily put 4 24-inch roller bags right back here. It's really not terribly difficult, but there's yet more going on in this cargo space than meets the eye, because if I remove this load floor, I'll put it over there, and then I remove this styrofoam cargo divider, then we are treated to yet more storage space right down here. That's partially because our particular model doesn't have the donut spare tire. But even if you did have the donut spare tire, there's a decent amount of additional storage space right under that cargo divider. If I pull out this little styrofoam block right here though, as you can see, this has the tire inflator and sort of can Fix-A-Flat as well as a tow hook. But if I take that out, you can actually put a 24-inch roller bag right down there in the cargo area, either that way or even this way right like that. Then we can put our styrofoam divider right down here with that bag. And then if we pull the load floor right back here, you'll see that the load floor fits right there, right flat, with a 24-inch roller bag and additional cargo and the inflator right down there under the floorboards. That's an awful lot more convenient than you'll find in your average compact sedan. Now, in addition to that, we can also fold these 60/40 folding seats almost completely flat with the cargo area, and even with that front seat all the way back in its tracks, I had no problem folding these seats down. Overall, I give this vehicle 10 out of 10 points when it comes to my exclusive Trunk Comfort Index. It's a very spacious, very practical cargo area. We have all that additional load space right there under the floor. We have that standard cargo divider over there. We have a handle to help you close this trunk lid on yourself. And most importantly, there's actually a release hatch right here under this little door in the tailgate. That's not something that you find in a great deal of hatchbacks because they assume you can escape some other way in the vehicle. I actually find that a handy safety feature. Out on the road, the Exclaim version of the Soul behaves very differently from the others, and it's mostly down to the wheels and the tires. We have very wide 235 width tires on 18-inch wheels all the way around on this Soul Exclaim. Those are much wider than the standard 205 width tires that you'll find on the base model, as well as the Eco model of the Plus. Wheels and tires can really change the way a vehicle behaves out on the road, and the Soul is a perfect example of that. The base model with its 205 width 16-inch tires feels a little bit ponderous out on the road. It doesn't seem like it has a whole lot of grip either. It definitely seems like it's a step behind your average compact sedan in this category. So something like a base Honda Civic or a base Corolla will handle better than a base Kia Soul. The Plus model steps things up a bit with 215 with 17-inch tires. If you do get the Eco package, then you should know that it actually moves back down to 205 width tires, and you get low rolling resistance tires. So if you get that Eco version of the Soul Plus, then you are going to get less road holding ability than your average compact sedan. However, in this Exclaim model that we're testing right here, we have very wide tires here. We didn't just go up to 225s. Kia actually skipped 225s and went straight to 235s. And that really makes a big difference in terms of handling with this vehicle. In addition to the tires being wider in this Exclaim model, they're also lower profile. And that profile refers to the ratio of wheel to tire. So if you take a look at this vehicle, there's a little bit less tire going on and a little bit more wheel. That gives you sharper handling because there's less flex in the tire. As a result of this tire upgrade, I give the Soul Exclaim 8 out of 10 points when it comes to handling. This handles very well. It doesn't handle as well as some of the dedicated performance versions of those compact sedans. So if you're taking a look at something like a Civic Si, that's obviously going to handle better. Even a Mazda 3 in the 2.5-liter engine version is going to handle better than this, but it still does incredibly well for itself, even when you compare it to that more expensive compact sedan segment. Of course, anytime you lower the profile on a tire, there's going to be a toll when it comes to the ride. And as a result, I give this 7 out of 10 points when it comes to the ride. The Soul also has a somewhat short wheelbase when you compare it to your average compact sedan. That does have an effect out on the road as well. Especially on washboard pavement, it can feel a little bit less settled than your average compact sedan. Because this vehicle isn't terribly heavy, we still ran from 0 to 60 in 8.5 seconds, which is fairly average for the compact sedan segment. Things stretch out to 9.5 seconds if you do get the base model with the 1.6-liter engine. That seemed to be about the same whether you got the manual or the automatic transmission. Overall, I'll give this 7 out of 10 points. It is fairly average for the compact sedan category. One thing to note, however, is that 8.5 seconds is significantly faster than your average subcompact, and the Soul in many ways competes with subcompacts as well as compacts. So if you take a look at the price of something like a Ford Fiesta hatchback, it's not really that far off of the Kia Soul, and the Soul actually handles better and accelerates a little better than base versions of that Ford Fiesta. Thanks to the wide tires, braking distances are very short in the Exclaim model. They're notably shorter than the Plus or the base model. I'll give this 8 out of 10 points when it comes to braking. Things drop down to maybe about 5 or 6 out of 10 points when we get the base model of the Soul. I don't expect that many people to be shopping for that particular model, however. Most people are going to be in that Plus model, which is just one notch below this at 7 out of 10 points. Regardless of trim, cabin noise is relatively well controlled for a compact sedan. I'll give this 7 out of 10 points. Keeping in mind that we do have this large open cargo area back there, hatchbacks typically aren't as quiet as sedans. So do keep that in mind if you are going to compare this with something like a Civic sedan or a Ford Focus sedan or something like a Corolla sedan. Those are going to be a little bit quieter out on the road depending on the road surface because we don't have that big hatchback there. If you're a regular viewer, then you may recall I recently had a review of a Kia Soul rental car on my channel. I had that car for about 2 to 3 days down in Southern California on relatively similar roads to this. Now that was the Plus model, so it did have the narrower tires and there were also slightly higher profile tires. It really makes a decent difference out on winding mountain roads. In fact, the difference is more pronounced than I thought it would be. While the acceleration obviously hasn't changed because the engine and transmission are the same, this is an awful lot more fun out on these winding mountain roads up here. Definitely more fun than I thought it would be, and also definitely more fun than base versions of, again, a Civic, a Fusion, a Corolla, or anything in that compact sedan category. Now, obviously something like a Civic Si or a Focus Titanium will have wider tires as well, and they will be a little bit more fun out on the road, but they're also going to cost you more. Kia has yet to announce pricing for the 2015 model year, although I don't expect things to change very much over the 2014 pricing. Things start out at $14,900 for the base model. That gets you the 1.6-liter engine, the manual transmission, Bluetooth interface, as well as satellite radio. Stepping up to the next trim will set you back $18,200. That's for the Plus model. That gives you the remote keyless entry, upgraded interior, upgraded exterior fixings, 17-inch wheels, and the 2-liter engine with the automatic transmission. The Exclaim model that we're taking a look at right here starts at $20,300. That gets you the backup cam, the UVO with e-services, and more standard equipment, more standard features, wider tires, etc. Now that particular model, if you add all the options up, will set you back $28,200. Well, I admit that my head is frequently turned by fully loaded models like the one we're taking a look at here, and indeed I really like all the features and functionality packed into this fully loaded model. I think my favorite version of the Soul is actually the Plus with the Primo package. That will set you back $23,895. And with that package, you can get the two-tone interior, you can get the panoramic roof, ventilated seats, heated rear seats, 8-inch navigation system, automatic climate control, backup cam, the heated steering wheel, as well as those speaker lights. Now, of course, if you get the Plus, it's not going to handle quite as well as this. The fuel economy is going to be ever so slightly higher. It's not going to handle quite as well, and you're going to get a slightly better ride because of the tire change. There are also some additional interior changes that happen in the Exclaim model that you won't get in that Plus model, but I think overall that's probably the best value in my mind. For 2015, there's also going to be that EV model. There's no dedicated pricing out for that model yet. However, it should slot between $35,000 and $40,000 approximately. I have been told that it will be eligible for the $7,500 federal EV rebate, which will take its price down to nearly this Exclaim model in fully loaded trim. Don't expect the same level of features and functionality in that EV, however, as in this particular model, because you do have to pay for that battery pack somehow. How the Soul stacks up against the competition really depends on what you think the competition is, because there are a lot of things you could cross-shop with this Soul. If you're taking a look at something like a Fiat 500L, this is about $3,500 less than that Fiat. I think it's a decent amount better looking as well. This is about $500 more expensive than a Honda Fit, but I think it's a little bit more practical than that Fit. It's also a little bit faster. The Fit will get you slightly better fuel economy, I'm told, however. Nissan has now officially killed off the Cube in America, so that's no longer a direct competitor to the Soul. We of course have the Scion XB, but honestly, I don't think it's as good of a value as the Soul. The Soul has more features, more functionality. I think it's an awful lot better looking as well on the inside than that particular Scion. Overall, I give the Soul 9 out of 10 points when it comes to value, and that's not just at the low end, that's also at the top end of the scale. And that's somewhat unusual in the auto industry, because normally vehicles are very good deals at the top end or at the bottom end. For Kia, typically lately, it's been at the top end. So the more loaded you make your Kia, the better value it seems versus the competition. But that's not the case with the Soul. It's about $2,200 less than a Honda Civic, several $1,000s less than a Toyota Corolla, a Dodge Dart, a Chevy Sonic, or anything that this might directly compete with in that compact sedan category. Feature for feature, the Soul is also a decent value when you compare it to something like a Ford Focus Titanium or a Mazda 3 hatchback, with which it compares fairly well. Now, it won't handle quite as well as the Focus Titanium or that Mazda 3 hatchback, but you will get a decent amount of feature content on the inside that you can't get in those alternatives. There is, of course, a price to be paid for the cargo practicality as well as the funky, chunky looks of the Soul, and that's really fuel economy, so you will end up paying at the pump versus something like your average compact sedan or even certain mid-size sedans. There are mid-size sedans out there that will average better than 26 miles per gallon, which is what I've been getting in this vehicle, as well as what the EPA has rated it for. However, if you're looking for something that's more exciting than your average compact sedan, this is definitely it. If you're looking for something that's more practical than your average compact, then this is definitely it. If you're looking for something that doesn't look too station wagony, but you still want the cargo practicality, then yet again, the Soul is definitely for you. My bottom line is that the Soul is definitely a vehicle that I would recommend buying. It's a vehicle that I've also recommended to friends, and they've actually bought them and seem very happy with them so far. Kia has managed to strike a very good balance between being interesting and being a little bit outside the box in terms of design, but not crossing that line to be too weird or too peculiar or too out of the box. Something like that Nissan Cube, which I think was just a little bit too far for most Americans to stomach. I think they also avoided being too sedate. Something like the Scion XB seems just a little bit too sedate in its current generation, and that's not really happening with the Soul. It has that right mixture of elegance, quirky good looks, and solid features on the inside. In addition to that, Kia also has a really long warranty. So they have a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty and a really long bumper-to-bumper warranty. That's definitely unique in this segment because you won't find that kind of warranty on most of those other compact sedans with which this competes. Of course, unless you're taking a look at something like a Kia Forte or a Hyundai Elantra, those also have very long warranties as well. But they also don't have the same cargo practicality as the Soul. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2014 Kia Soul Exclaim. Go ahead and click that banner at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of my latest videos. You can also check me out at facebook.com/alexandautos. Email your questions to alex@alexandautos.com, and I'll see you next week. Hamster Susie, Hamster Sam, do the jitterbug out in Hamsterland, watch 'em shimmy. Sammy's so skinny, floating like a heavens above, looks like hamster love.